The flames tore through the quiet Colorado night with a violence that seemed to suck the air from the sky. My phone shattered the silence at 2:47 a.m. It was my neighbor, Gil, his voice tight and urgent. "Declan, you need to get here. Your house is on fire." The drive was a blur of red lights and deserted highways, a 23-minute trip done in a panicked haze. I arrived to pure chaos. The flashing lights of 3 fire trucks painted the street in erratic pulses of red and white. The acrid smell of smoke was thick, but underneath it, cutting through the scent of burning wood and melting plastic, was the unmistakable, pungent odor of gasoline. My beautiful 1920s Craftsman, the one I'd spent every morning in for months, was engulfed. The back half, the addition I just framed for Iris's room, was a skeleton of blackened studs against a hellish orange glow. Firefighters had given up on offense. They were in a defensive crouch, hosing down the neighboring roofs to keep the devastation from spreading. I stood there, rooted, my hands clenched at my sides. The heat from the blaze washed over my face, even from across the street. That's when I saw her. Parked under the shadow of a large pine, engine idling, was a white Lexus SUV. Behind the wheel, illuminated by the eerie dance of the firelight, sat Bryn Castellane, the HOA president. She wasn't helping. She wasn't on the phone. She was just watching, her face a placid mask, as if this were a particularly gripping television drama. She thought no one saw her in the chaotic dark, but I did. I knew, with a cold, certain clarity that settled deep in my bones, exactly who was responsible for this. For months, she'd been a constant, toxic presence. It started the day I closed on the property. She'd arrived with a clipboard and a tape measure, citing me for dormant grass in January. Then came the deluge of certified letters. The wrong shade of black on my mailbox, the construction dumpster, my work truck in my own driveway. It was petty, bureaucratic harassment, but it had a sharp, personal edge. Then she made a comment, standing on my porch, looking at my supplies. "We can't have it looking like a construction yard for those people who flip houses for Section 8, she'd said. The way she said those people turned my stomach. This wasn't about rules. It was about something uglier. The sabotage started subtly. A county inspector showed up on a bogus complaint about unpermitted electrical work, shutting me down for 2 days based on photos that weren't even from my property. The inspector, an older man named Ernesto, had lowered his voice. "Third call from her this month," he'd said. The financial audit was the trigger. I'd requested the HOA's meeting minutes, a dry exercise that revealed a shocking pattern. Board members' violations were quietly waived, while mine and others were enforced with zeal. The HOA was paying a management company owned by Bryn's sister an astronomical $8,500 a month. When I discovered the HOA's insurance had lapsed, leaving every board member personally liable, I knew the game had changed. I shared that information, anonymously, with a few homeowners who'd been wronged. The next meeting exploded. That's when I found the note on my truck. Asterisk judges shouldn't play contractor. Someone could get hurt. Asterisk she'd found out what I did for a living. Now, as I watched my house burn, I thought of Iris. She'd fought ovarian cancer for 3 years with a grace and stubbornness that humbled me. This house was for her, a near-identical copy of her childhood home, destined to be a sanctuary for other cancer survivors. Bryn hadn't just set a building on fire. She'd tried to incinerate a promise. But she'd made a critical mistake. 2 weeks earlier, after the vandalism that ruined my newly refinished floors, I'd installed 4 hidden cameras around the property. Motion-activated, cellular-connected, with battery backups. They were legal. It was my land, and I was no longer just a grieving widower or a frustrated homeowner. I was the local municipal court magistrate who, in a few days' time, would be signing her arrest warrant for felony arson and, as fate would cruelly have it, presiding over her traffic court case. The irony was not lost on me. She tried to destroy my life's work, but she had no idea she was pouring gasoline on her own future. The aftermath of the fire was a slow, grim ballet of ash and investigation. The fire marshal, a soot-streaked man named Henriksen with eyes that had seen too much, confirmed what I already knew. "Point of origin is the basement window on the backside," he said, his voice gravelly with fatigue. Accelerant detected. Gasoline. He called it arson, intentional and malicious. A neighbor had reported a light-colored SUV speeding away around 2 in the morning. Gil had told me he'd seen Bryn's white Lexus cruising past my property twice that very afternoon, moving slow, like a shark circling. I gave all of this to Detective Ortega, a grizzled veteran who listened patiently, took meticulous notes, and then delivered the hard truth. It's a pattern, Judge. Textbook escalation. But arson is tough. Without a witness who can place her here, without physical evidence tying her to the scene, it's circumstantial. A decent defense attorney would have a field day. Her alibi, he told me, was that she was home asleep. Her husband confirmed it. The case went officially cold in 2 weeks. No arrest, no charges, just a blackened scar on my property and a hollow feeling in my chest. I should have been furious, and a part of me was a hot, sharp rage thinking of Iris's room reduced to cinders. But a colder, more patient part, the part forged in courtrooms and at my wife's bedside during her long fight, took over. Criminals, especially arrogant ones, have a compulsion. They return to the scene. They need to see their handiwork, to confirm their victory, to gloat. So, I began to play a part. I filed the insurance claim, playing the devastated homeowner. I hired a crew for the cleanup, moving through the motions with a defeated slump in my shoulders when neighbors were around. I let the narrative be that Bryn had won, and I left the house unlocked during the day. It was an invitation, a gamble. The hidden cameras were my only audience. 3 days after the fire, my phone pinged with a motion alert. Camera 2. I pulled up the app, and there she was. Bryn Castellane in broad daylight, walking through the wreckage of my backyard. She picked her way through the charred debris, her face not showing remorse or fear, but a kind of clinical assessment. She stopped at the pile of ash that was once the bedroom, nudged a blackened beam with the toe of her expensive sneaker, and then, almost casually, bent down and picked up a piece of melted copper pipe. She turned it over in her hand, then slipped it into her purse. The entire trespass was captured in crisp 4K. She was not just revisiting the scene, she was removing evidence. In Colorado, that's tampering, a felony on its own. I didn't send the footage to Ortega. Not yet. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, the one I had set in motion weeks before the fire. The audit. It arrived via email on a quiet Wednesday in my courthouse chambers. 47 pages of dry, forensic accounting that laid bare a breathtaking crime. The auditor's report didn't find errors. It found a systematic loot. Over 3 years, Bryn and her sister's management company had billed the HOA for phantom landscaping, ghost invoices for work never done. $147,000. But the real masterpiece was the reserve fund. The neighborhood's emergency savings, which should have held $180,000, had been drained to a mere $4,200. The money was moved out in chunks labeled emergency repairs, with no supporting documents. To authorize checks that large, the bylaws required 2 signatures, the president and the treasurer. Bryn had simply forged the treasurer's signature, a man named Piotr. The audit included a handwriting analysis. It wasn't even a good forgery. I forwarded the report to every homeowner in Ponderosa Bluffs. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Email chains exploded. A recall petition materialized overnight. Piotr, rightfully furious, filed a police report for identity theft and fraud. The ensuing community meeting was a packed, tense affair. Bryn arrived with a lawyer, a slick man in a suit who billed by the hour for obfuscation. Her defense was pathetic. Accounting errors, a bookkeeper's mistakes. "We'll pay it back," she insisted, her voice shrill over the angry murmurs. Morin, the retired schoolteacher, stood up. "You stole $147,000, and you call a mistake?" Gil followed, his military bearing making him seem taller. "You forged Piotr's name. That's a felony." Bryn's mask finally cracked. "This is a witch hunt," she screamed, shaking off her lawyer's restraining hand. "I've given years to this community." I sat in the back, silent, watching the unraveling. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from the court clerk. "Asterisk FYI, traffic docket for you on July 11th. Case, City versus Castellane, Bryn. Reckless driving. Asterisk, I read it twice, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. The wheels of justice, both small and large, were turning. She had no idea what was coming. The night after the explosive HOA meeting, we gathered in Gil's garage. 7 of us, Morin, Gil, Piotr, and 4 other homeowners whose quiet anger had finally boiled over, sat on folding chairs and upturned buckets. The smell of motor oil and damp concrete was a grounding contrast to the abstract fury of stolen funds. I spread printouts of the audit across Gil's workbench, the columns of numbers and flag forgeries stark under the fluorescent light. Okay, I began, my voice low and steady, the same tone I used to explain legal procedures to confused defendants. The audit's done. It shows theft, plain and simple. Piotr's filed a police report. But we need a strategy because this will get messy. Morin, ever practical, raised her hand. Can we sue her? Yes, I said. The HOA, as an entity, can sue Bryn and her sister's management company for restitution. You want a lawyer on contingency. Given this paper trail, they'll take the case. Piotr leaned forward, his face grim. And criminal charges? That's up to the district attorney. They have the audit now. Felony theft, fraud, forgery. It's serious. But prosecution is slow. Could be a year or more. I let that sink in, then laid out the plan I'd been piecing together. 3-pronged attack. First, the civil lawsuit to recover the money. That's financial justice. Second, report Bryn to the Colorado Real Estate Commission. She's a licensed agent. This is a massive ethics violation. If they revoke her license, she loses her income overnight. Gil's grin was fierce. I like that one. Third, I continued, pressure the DA. All of you write victim impact statements. Explain how this theft affected your property values, your sense of security. A stack of those letters moves a case up the priority list. I explained the legal principle they needed to understand, fiduciary duty. Board members have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the organization, not themselves. Breach that, and her personal assets, house, cars, savings, are all on the table. She can't hide behind the HOA. A younger homeowner named Marcus asked the fear everyone felt. Are we liable for what she did? No, I assured them. You're victims. But the HOA as an entity could be sued if someone claims negligence, so you need to act fast. New board, new management, new bylaws. Show good faith. We divided the work. Morin would research attorneys. Gil would organize the victim letters. Piotr would manage the recall election. My task was filing the Real Estate Commission complaint signed by all of us. But I held back one card. I didn't tell them about the security footage from 3 days prior, of Bryn trespassing and pocketing the melted copper pipe. That was for a different fight. In Colorado, removing potential evidence from a crime scene is tampering, a separate felony. I was saving it. People like Bryn, I learned from the bench, are addicts, addicted to control, to winning. They can't stop. She would make another move. And when she did, I would have her. The meeting broke up with a sense of grim purpose. After the others left, Gil and I stood in his driveway under the yellow porch light. You think she knows you're behind this? He asked. Probably, I said. But she can't prove it. And even if she could, so what? I'm a homeowner explaining the law to my neighbors. Gil nodded. You're a patient man, Declan. I learned from the best, I said, thinking of Iris's 3-year siege against a disease that never slept. She's going to do something stupid, Gil predicted. Soon. I'm counting on it, I replied. Her next move wasn't stupid. It was desperate. A 4-page letter arrived at every house in Ponderosa Bluffs, printed on expensive cardstock with a real estate logo. It claimed the audit was fabricated, a witch hunt orchestrated by disgruntled rule breakers. I was named specifically, accused of using my position as a magistrate to intimidate her. Attached was a lawyer's letter threatening a $500,000 defamation suit against me personally. I read on my porch, sipping cold coffee, and laughed. Defamation requires false statements. The audit was fact. This was noise, designed to scare me and muddy the waters. It didn't work. Then, a local reporter called. Mr. Declan, Bryn Castellane claims you're using your judicial role to harass the HOA. Comment. I kept my voice neutral. No comment on potential litigation. But HOA financial records are public. I'd encourage you to read the audit and draw your own conclusions. She called back 2 days later. Her tone changed. I read it. This isn't a dispute. This is fraud. The story never ran. Bryn's lawyer shut it down the moment she was asked for proof. The escalation came at the end of June. A certified letter from the Colorado Office of Judicial Discipline. An anonymous ethics complaint had been filed against me. Abuse of authority, conflict of interest, using my position for personal gain. My chest tightened. Even a baseless complaint meant an investigation, interviews, a stain on my record. The language was pure Bryn. I forwarded everything to my courthouse supervisor. The full timeline, the audit, the arson. She was furious on my behalf. You've done nothing wrong, Declan. You're a homeowner. This will be dismissed. But the process was the punishment, a months-long distraction, exactly what Bryn wanted. That night, holding a vile, anonymous note left on my truck that read, "Your wife would be ashamed." I wondered if it was true. Was this justice or vengeance? Morin showed up with soup and a dose of cold wisdom. Iris fought for 3 years. You think she'd want you to quit now? She was right. Anger can be the fuel that keeps you standing. The next morning, I finally sent the email to Detective Ortega. The subject line, evidence in arson case, trespass, and tampering. The attachment was 43 seconds of crystal clear video. 3 hours later, he called. I'm taking this to the DA today. The noose, patiently woven, was beginning to tighten. The knock on my condo door at 8:45 p.m. was unexpected. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Bryn Castellane. My address wasn't public. She'd had to dig through property records or follow me. It was an act of boundary-breaking desperation. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. She looked wrecked. The perfectly styled bob was lank, her spray tan patchy, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She wore yoga pants and a baggy sweatshirt, a far cry from the sharp-suited HOA president. Declan, please. I need to talk to you. Her voice was a frayed wire. You should be talking to your attorney, not me, I said, my voice flat. Please. 5 minutes. Against every instinct, I stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind me. I didn't let her cross the threshold. Clipped discreetly to my shirt pocket was a small body camera. In Colorado, single-party consent meant I could record our conversation, and I was very much a consenting party. What do you want, Bryn? She took a shaky breath. I'll resign. From everything. My sister will return the money. Not all of it. We don't have all of it, but 100,000. A good faith payment. I'll drop the defamation suit. I'll retract the ethics complaint against you. She paused, her eyes pleading. Just tell the DA to drop the charges. You're a judge. They'll listen to you. The audacity was breathtaking. I'm a municipal judge, I said slowly, carefully. Traffic violations, small claims. I have zero authority over felony prosecutions. And what you're asking is obstruction of justice. Her face twisted, the fear curdling into rage. You're destroying my life over some accounting errors. Your insurance paid for the house. You're fine, but you can't just let it go, can you? Accounting errors? I kept my tone calm, a flat surface for her to project onto. You stole $147,000. You forged signatures. You committed arson. I didn't, she shouted, then caught herself. Her next words came out in a frantic, hushed rush. The fire, it was an accident. I just wanted to scare you. I didn't think it would spread that far. There it was. A confession captured in high definition. You wanted to scare me, I repeated, ensuring the audio was clear, by setting my house on fire. The blood drained from her face as she realized what she'd just said. Her eyes darted to the barely visible camera lens on my chest. I didn't mean, that's not. Bryn, I cut in, my voice low and final. You need to leave now, and you need to get an attorney. A criminal defense attorney. Not the guy handling your defamation suit. Someone who specializes in felonies. You're ruining my life, she screamed, the sound echoing in the sterile hallway. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Over a fire. Your insurance paid for it. It was just property. It was my wife's dream. I said, the words quiet but cutting through her hysterics. And you burned it to the ground because I asked for an audit. She stared at me, her chest heaving. The crying turned into something guttural, a raw sound of fury and defeat. You think you're so righteous? You think you're better than me? You're just She saw my hand move instinctively toward the camera and her eyes widened again. She took a stumbling step back, looked from the camera to my face, and then turned and fled down the hallway, her footsteps slapping against the concrete until the stairwell door slammed shut behind her. I went inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. My hands were steady. I downloaded the video file to 3 separate drives, labeling each meticulously. Then I waited. The machinery I had helped set in motion was now rolling on its own. The next morning, at 11, Bryn was arrested at her real estate office. The charges read out like a tally of her dissent: arson, evidence tampering, criminal trespass. The attempted bribery from her hallway plea would come later. She used $80,000 from the HOA's drained reserve fund to post her $75,000 bail, an act of such staggering arrogance it added a fresh theft charge before the cell door had even finished locking. Her husband, the quiet dentist, filed for divorce that same afternoon. The local news story was brutal. Morin gave a calm, devastating interview. Detective Ortega held up a still from my security footage for the cameras. Bryn's high-priced attorney issued a statement about maintaining innocence. 2 days later, I was in my chambers, the black polyester robe feeling less like cloth and more like a weight. The docket slip was in my hand. Asterisk case 24 TR 8844. City versus Castellane, Bryn. Reckless driving. 93 in a 55. School zone. Asterisk the date was July 11th. I walked into Courtroom 3B at 8:58. The gallery was packed, a murmur of anticipation filling the space. Morin, Gil, Piotr, the dozen other homeowners. Detective Ortega in the back, a news photographer, and at the defense table, Bryn and a new, young lawyer who looked profoundly out of his depth. The bailiff called the court to order. She rose and turned. When she saw me on the bench, the color leached from her face entirely, leaving a waxy, shocked pallor. Her mouth opened in a silent O of horror. "Good morning," I said, my voice echoing with formal neutrality in the quiet room. "Court is in session." I called her case. Her attorney tried to request a continuance, citing her other legal circumstances. I denied it. This court's jurisdiction is limited to the traffic matter before it. "Ms. Castellane, how do you plead?" Her voice was a ghost. "Not guilty." The city attorney played the dashcam footage. It was unequivocal. Her white Lexus doing 93 past a school crossing, the littered cigarette, the obscene gesture to the officer. The defense's argument, a malfunctioning speedometer, was pathetic. "Did you not notice you were passing other vehicles?" I asked. She stammered about being distracted. "By what personal problems?" I pressed. She fell silent. I found her guilty. The fine was steep, the points maximal, community service mandatory. It was the standard penalty for endangering children in a school zone. But as I pronounced the sentence, she stood, pointing a trembling finger. "This is bias. You're punishing me because of the HOA." The room froze. I leaned forward. "Ms. Castellane, I have presided over 1,400 traffic cases. Every defendant who endangered children in a school zone receives this penalty. You are not special. The difference is most express remorse." Her composure shattered. "You think you're so righteous? You're just My gavel came down, a sharp, authoritative crack. "Contempt of court. Additional $500 fine. Deputy, please escort the defendant out." Officer Caitlin, who had taken her false police report months ago, gently took her arm. Bryn was sobbing now, raw and loud, as she was led away. The gallery was utterly silent until the door closed. Then a slow, soft wave of applause rippled through the room. I did not acknowledge it. I gathered my papers, rose, and exited through the side door. The sound of the gavel seemed to hang in the air long after I was gone. The small justice was served. The larger justice was still to come. October brought a crispness to the Colorado air and a final, Grim resolution to the legal saga. Bryn Castellane, facing a mountain of evidence from the audit, the security footage, and her own recorded confession, took a plea deal. Her attorney called it pragmatic. The district attorney called it justice. She pleaded guilty to felony arson and evidence tampering. The other charges were dropped in the agreement. The sentence was 4 years in prison, with 3 suspended. She would serve 1 year behind bars, followed by 3 years of strict probation. She was ordered to pay me $127,000 in restitution, a payment plan stretched over a decade. A permanent restraining order barred her from ever setting foot in Ponderosa Bluffs again. The Colorado Real Estate Commission moved swiftly, permanently revoking her license with no possibility of reinstatement. The career she had used as a shield was gone. The HOA civil suit settled out of court. Bryn's sister's management company, a hollow shell, declared bankruptcy, but the judgment followed the sister's personal assets. The stolen money, plus damages, was returned to the neighborhood's coffers. A new board was elected with Morin as president and Piotr as treasurer. Their first act was to slash the management fee to a reasonable rate and hire a reputable, unconnected firm. HOA dues were cut by 40%. The change in the neighborhood was palpable. The atmosphere of suspicion lifted. People lingered to talk at mailboxes. A community garden was planned for a neglected corner of the common area. My house was finished in February, 10 months after the fire. The reconstruction was faithful to the original, the craftsman details lovingly restored. On the day it was done, I stood in the entryway holding a simple brass plaque I'd had engraved, Asterisk Iris's house. Built with love, restored with purpose. Asterisk, I fastened it beside the front door. 3 days later, the first resident moved in. Her name was Shayla, a 34-year-old breast cancer survivor with 2 young children, Marcus and Lily. They would live there, rent-free, for a year. When Shayla walked through the door, she touched the walls and cried quietly. "You're sure?" She kept asking. "You're sure this is real?" I told her it was. "Take your time," I said. "Heal. That's what this place is for." Then, something beautiful and unplanned began to happen. The house became a living thing, a hub. Morin started hosting her book club in the sunny living room. Shayla loved the company. Gil began offering Saturday morning chess lessons for neighborhood kids there, the quiet concentration a peaceful counterpoint to past strife. Marcus, Shayla's son, started following me around, asking about tools. I showed him how to hold a tape measure, how to sink a screw straight. He began calling me Uncle Deck. With the restitution money from Bryn, I established the Iris Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to providing transitional housing assistance for cancer survivors in the Denver area. The first year, we helped 14 families stay in their homes during treatment. We launched an annual fundraiser, the Ponderosa Hope Festival, a summer block party that brought the whole neighborhood together and raised $38,000. The cruel irony was not lost on me. Bryn's crime, born of greed and malice, had ultimately forged a stronger, more compassionate community and created a legacy of tangible good. I think Iris would have appreciated that twist. People sometimes ask if I feel bad that Bryn went to prison. The honest answer is no. She was given countless off-ramps, opportunities to stop, to apologize, to make amends. She chose escalation at every turn. But I do think about her. I wonder if she understands the true cost, not of the rebuilt house, but the trust she obliterated and the fear she sowed. Justice, in the end, wasn't about my satisfaction. It was about ensuring she could never do to anyone else what she did to us. I was sitting on the porch of Iris's house at sunset not long ago. Shayla's kids were chasing fireflies in the yard. Morin was inside, using the kitchen she adored to make dinner for everyone. Gil was on his way over for his weekly chess match with Marcus. The air was soft, filled with the sounds of easy laughter and quiet talk. In that moment, I understood what Iris had truly wanted. It was never about revenge or even just about punishment. It was about restoration. It was about creating a space where broken things, whether they were houses, people, or communities, could be made whole again. It was about people healing together, finding strength in the very places that had once known pain. So here we are. The story found its end, not in a blaze, but in a quiet, steadfast light. The nightmare is over. The house stands full of life and purpose. The neighborhood found its soul again. And the memory of my wife is woven into the walls, and the work, a permanent, gentle reminder that even from ashes something good can grow. Sometimes justice isn't a verdict. It's a choice to rebuild, to reach out, and to turn a story of loss into one of hope. That's the ending we made.